One last film, one last house to make Greenson happy. It resembled a turned page. And why not? Would she one day consider one last session? 20th Century Fox informed her that she would have to make Something's Got to Give with George Cukor. Greenson negotiated a large sum of money for her and a position as special advisor on the film. He would choose the images to be edited. She attended the Golden Globe Awards ceremony with her Mexican lover, Jose Bolanos. She showed up pale, thin, and drunk in a backless green silk dress. For many people, Marilyn was finished. Endgame. Greenson said that life resembled a game of chess, where one wrong move could force you to give up the game. The difference being that in life, there was no possibility of a return game. During the last year of her life, their relationship became frenzied. Greenson wanted to incarnate the father who had failed her so completely. She called him day and night to tell him about her dreams and her anguish. He couldn't take anymore, and in May he left for Europe. Marilyn fell apart.
I would like very much to be...
She bought a tape recorder and recorded her thoughts in her home, at night in the dark.
What I mean by fine, a real actress. I think trying to be happy is almost as difficult as trying to be a good actress.
She wanted Greenson to hear her free associating.
I think love and work are the only things that really happen to us.
These were the words John Miner heard on the day of Marilyn's funeral.
It doesn't really matter. And I think one without the other isn't so good. I think that...
These were the tapes that John Miner retranscribed and brought to the journalist of the Los Angeles Times 40 years later. The start of Something's Got to Give was a nightmare. Marilyn was persuaded that Cukor hated her and threatened to kill herself. She left the studio in the middle of the shoot to sing at Madison Square Garden for the 45th birthday celebration of the President of the United States. The studio threatened to fire her. The night of her arrival, New York was a giant ball where she was the queen. A checkerboard where her beauty dominated. She made imaginary moves on the grid-patterned street blocks. The White King absent. Her mother, the Black Queen. Marilyn, the White Queen. Greenson, White Knight or Black? The Kennedys, two black bishops. Troubled, she had a hard time during rehearsals. She had difficulty repeating happy birthday to you for the 30th time.
Happy birthday.
The stage director was frightened by the pained voice coming out of her, her faint breathing.
To you. Happy birthday to you.
Marilyn Monroe was like a happy child allowed into the presence of adults. It was impossible for a girl who had spent her childhood in poverty to resist the honors showered on her. She paid $1,000 to attend. When the night came, Bobby showed up at the celebration accompanied by his wife.
Mr. President, on this occasion,
But the president came alone.
this lovely lady is not only multitudinous, but punctual. Mr. President, Marilyn Monroe. A woman about whom it truly may be said she needs no introduction. So let me just say, here she is. But I'll give her an introduction anyway, Mr. President, because in the history of show business, perhaps there has been no one female.
She stepped out of the dark, unsteady on her feet, as if bothered by the generous curves exposed in her transparent dress.
Mr. President, the late Marilyn Monroe.
The late Marilyn Monroe. The word late signifies showing up late, as well as deceased. She had fulfilled her dream. She was late to her own funeral. Her words were like a caress of pleasure, her voice increasingly charged with sex, the sight and sound of a parody of herself.
You. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, Mr. President. Happy birthday to you. Thanks, Mr. President, for all the things you've done, the battles that you've won, the way you deal with U.S. Steel and our problems by the ton. We thank you so much. Everybody!
After the performance, Bobby Kennedy fluttered around her like a moth around a flame. But in the early morning hours, it was John who took Marilyn back to his suite at the Carlisle Hotel. She would never see John Kennedy again. After that night, he decided to break off their relation and deny all rumors. The photos of the evening were confiscated by the FBI. Marilyn was bitter. People said her $6,000 dress was so tight, it must have been sewn on her. They didn't understand. It wasn't her dress that was her skin, but her skin that was a piece of flesh clothing. It was her skin that prevented her from being naked.